You ever meet someone so obsessed with control that they'd rather forge an entire legal system than admit they're wrong? Yeah, that happened to me. My HOA president, Karen Henderson, literally created her own court complete with fake judges, made-up seals, and eviction orders printed in Comic Sans. And she tried to kick my wife and me out of our own house. What she didn't know was that her entire fantasy was about to crumble on police Bodycam in front of the whole neighborhood and eventually the internet. It all started on a calm Saturday morning, the kind that makes you forget you even live under an HOA. The coffee was hot, the dog was chasing squirrels, and for a brief moment I thought life was good. Then I heard it. The sharp clack of high heels on my driveway. It sounded like a warning bell from hell. I looked out the window, and there she was, Karen, the self-appointed queen of Cedar Creek Estates, marching toward my door with a clipboard like it was a sword of justice. Behind her, 2 HOA board members trailed along, avoiding eye contact like they'd been dragged there against their will. She banged on my door hard enough to rattle the glass and yelled, "You've been served." I opened the door confused, and she slapped a sheet of paper on my screen door like she was in a courtroom drama. I picked it up and I swear I almost choked on my coffee. The title said, "Eviction Notice by Order of the HOA Court." HOA Court. I didn't even know that was a thing. Spoiler, it's not. I laughed, out loud. "Karen, this isn't real," I said. She crossed her arms, lips pursed tight as a jar lid. "You have 72 hours to vacate this property," she barked. The board voted unanimously. I said, "What violation?" she replied. "The ones I wrote." That's when I realized this wasn't about the HOA, it was about her. She'd finally gone off the rails completely. I asked to keep a copy, pretending to take it seriously. She proudly handed it over. The header said, "State of Suburbia," and the signature line, "Judge K. Henderson." She'd literally made herself the judge. I could barely breathe from laughing. When I told my wife, she thought I was kidding until she saw Karen later that afternoon handing out copies of the same court order to our neighbors, warning them not to associate with us because we were trespassers. Half the street believed her. That's the thing about Karen. She says nonsense with so much confidence, you start doubting your own sanity. By evening, rumors were flying everywhere. Someone said we'd done illegal renovations. Another said we were running an unlicensed business. My favorite one, that we were harboring farm animals. Pretty sure that referred to our golden retriever Max. I tried to ignore it, I really did. But then the next morning we woke up to find another notice taped to our door. This one had a sheriff's seal on it. For half a second my stomach dropped, until I looked closer. The seal was pixelated. She'd literally copied the county sheriff's badge from Google Images and pasted it on the paper. The text was in Comic Sans. "Failure to vacate will result in forcible removal by law enforcement," it read. I just stared at it in disbelief. Karen had gone from HOA president to suburban dictator overnight. That same afternoon, a rent-a-cop, some local security guy with a body cam strapped to his chest, showed up. "I'm here to supervise the removal process," he said, looking awkward. I couldn't help it. I laughed. "Buddy, do you even know what you're enforcing?" He shrugged. "Karen said there's a court order." That's when I invited him inside, showed him the house deed with my name on it, and called the police. When the real officers arrived, Karen came running down the street like she was leading a crusade. "Officers," she shouted, "they're trespassing on HOA property." The cops gave her a look that could have frozen lava. They asked to see her documents. She handed over the same forged papers, chin-high eyes blazing with self-righteous fury. The officer wearing the body cam quietly examined the papers, and then his face changed from polite confusion to disbelief. "Ma'am," he said, "forging court documents is a crime." Karen froze. You could almost see the gears turning in her head as she tried to come up with an excuse. "It's not forgery," she said. "It's community enforcement." The officer blinked, probably wondering if this was a prank. I stood there trying not to laugh while my wife filmed the whole thing from the porch. Karen's voice got louder, more desperate. "I have authority," she yelled. "I am the HOA. Am." That Bodycam footage would later go viral, but in the moment, it was pure chaos. The police told her to stop distributing fake legal documents, warned her about impersonating authority, and left. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. I was wrong. The next morning, I stepped outside to grab the paper, and there it was. A giant wooden sign hammered into my front lawn. Property seized pending HOA court appeal. Yellow caution tape covered my mailbox like we were a crime scene. My wife just stood there laughing so hard she cried. Across the street, Karen stood proudly with her arms crossed, whispering to a few neighbors like she'd just pulled off a federal sting. Someone asked her, "Are they really evicted?" She nodded solemnly. "Justice takes time," she said. That's when I decided if she was going to play pretend court, I was going to play pretend media. I printed a massive banner that said, "HOA Court equals 100% fictional." Hung it right over the caution tape. By noon, cars were slowing down to take pictures. Some neighbors honked. A few clapped. Karen stormed across the street, phone in hand, screaming, "That's slander. You can't mock an official proceeding," I said. "Official Karen, your court seal came from Microsoft clip art." She shoved her phone in my face and hit record. "Say that again for the record." I looked straight into the camera and said, "For the record, you forged a court order and glued a sheriff's badge from Google." Then I waved and smiled. Turns out that footage ended up online too, because a week later the Bodycam video from the police got released under public record. And just like that, it exploded. 10 million views overnight. People online dubbed her Judge Karen of Suburbia. Memes spread like wildfire. Karen in a judge's robe holding a rubber stamp that said, "HOA approved." My phone buzzed non-stop. Even the local news picked it up. At first I thought she'd hide in embarrassment, but oh no, she doubled down. She called a neighborhood meeting to clear her name. Everyone showed up. Not because they cared, because they wanted to see the show. Karen strutted to the front like she was testifying before Congress and said, "There's been a misunderstanding. The document was a prototype, not a forgery." The room fell silent. Then someone yelled from the back, "You literally signed it as the judge," another neighbor added, and stamped it with a butterfly ink pad. The room burst into laughter. Even her own board members were trying not to look at her. One guy, Dave the treasurer, quietly slid off his name tag and pretended to check his phone. The next few days were surreal. News vans parked near the entrance. Reporters asked if they could interview the couple who got evicted by a fake HOA court. I half expected Netflix to show up. Karen, of course, loved the attention. She gave a live interview under my banner that said, "Fictional HOA Court." When asked if she'd forged documents, she said, "No, I created them in the spirit of justice." The reporter blinked twice. I think his soul left his body. Meanwhile, the police were building a real case. Turns out using a fake government seal is more than just stupid, it's a crime. One afternoon, a detective showed up at Karen's house with a warrant to collect the documents. She actually tried to claim diplomatic immunity as head of the HOA judicial branch. The detective just stared at her like she'd announced she was Queen of Mars. A few days later, the county court issued an official summons. Karen was being charged with forgery, falsifying documents, and harassment. I wish I could say I didn't enjoy that moment, but come on, the irony was too perfect. The morning of her hearing felt like a festival. Neighbors lined up like it was the Super Bowl. Someone even live-streamed her walking to her car with the caption, "HOA Court Goes Federal." She strutted out in a bright red suit holding a manila folder like it was the Constitution. "Justice will prevail," she shouted. My wife whispered, "Yeah, just not for you." Inside the courtroom, the tension was thick. Karen marched to the front and announced, "I'll be representing myself as the head of the HOA judiciary." The judge blinked. "I'm sorry." "What judiciary?" "The homeowner's judicial division of Cedar Creek Estates," she replied confidently. You could hear people snort, trying not to laugh. The judge sighed. "Ma'am, that doesn't exist." Karen insisted, waving her papers. The bailiff gently took them like he was defusing a bomb made of glitter. The judge flipped through the pages, frowned, and asked, "Did you create this document yourself?" "Yes," she said proudly, "but only to restore order." That was it. The entire courtroom erupted. The prosecutor stood barely holding it together. "Your Honor," he said, "the defendant not only fabricated court documents, but distributed them as official eviction orders." Karen gasped like she was in a soap opera. "That's outrageous. I was protecting the sanctity of the HOA." The judge leaned back, rubbing his temples. "Ma'am, you printed the sheriff's badge from the internet." She fired back, "That's not illegal. It's clip art." At that point, even the bailiff was laughing. Then the prosecutor played the Bodycam footage. On the big screen there she was, Karen handing fake papers to the officers declaring state of suburbia. The judge paused the video halfway and asked Miss Henderson, "Did you really write your own name as the presiding judge?" She nodded. "Because I'm the only one who understands HOA law." The judge stared for a long moment, then said, "You might understand something, but it's not the law." The whole courtroom cracked up. When it was our turn to speak, I stood up and said, "Your Honor, we just want to live in peace without being prosecuted by a homemade government." Laughter filled the room again. Even the judge smiled. When it came time for sentencing, Karen tried one last desperate move. "I request that this case be moved to HOA jurisdiction," she said. The judge laughed out loud. "Ma'am, this is the jurisdiction." You could almost hear her fantasy collapse. He fined her for forgery and harassment, barred her from holding any HOA position ever again, and adjourned the case. The room erupted in applause. Someone yelled, "Order in the cul-de-sac." Karen stormed out muttering, "This isn't over," but everyone knew it was. The local news ran the headline, "HOA President Found Guilty After Forging Fake Court to Evict Homeowner." Memes came back with a vengeance. Someone printed T-shirts that said, "It's not forgery, it's community enforcement." Yeah, I bought one, and that was that. Cedar Creek finally breathed again. Karen disappeared for a while. No neon vest, no clipboard, no commands echoing through the neighborhood. Months later, I saw her jogging quietly, earbuds in, not even looking up. Maybe she finally learned something about humility. I kept the original eviction notice by order of the HOA court framed in my office, a reminder that sometimes the most ridiculous power trip can collapse under the weight of a single truth, a body cam, and a deed. Because in the end, no matter how loud the fake authority shouts, reality always wins.